Madison Square Garden, New York, September 12, 1988. The autumn air hung thick with anticipation, clinging to the skin of 20,000 souls gathered in reverent assembly. The Bad World Tour had already cemented itself as something transcendent, something more than mere entertainment. It was cultural communion on a scale seldom witnessed in human history. Tonight marked the third consecutive sold-out performance at this hallowed ground. Yet the electricity coursing through the venue felt uniquely charged, as if the collective consciousness somehow sensed that this evening would etch itself permanently into the annals of musical lore. The arena lights had dimmed 15 minutes ago, plunging the massive structure into a darkness so complete it seemed to swallow sound itself. Occasional lighters flickered like earthbound stars, their glow illuminating expectant faces frozen in expressions of almost religious anticipation. Children clutched their parents' hands, wide-eyed and trembling with excitement. Couples leaned into one another, whispering theories about which song would open the show. Seasoned fans who had followed Michael across continents stood silent, arms crossed, knowing the agony of waiting was itself part of the experience, the necessary tension before release. A low hum of whispers cascaded through the crowd like gentle waves, rising and falling with each false alarm, each shadow that moved across the massive stage. Then, without warning, silence, absolute and consuming. 20,000 breaths held simultaneously as darkness became a physical presence. 3 seconds passed. 5. 10. The silence stretched beyond comfort, pulling taut the invisible thread connecting every person in attendance. And then it happened. A single spotlight pierced the darkness, finding its target center stage. There stood Michael Jackson, motionless as a statue, head bowed, one gloved hand raised toward the heavens. The roar that followed wasn't merely sound. It was a physical force, a tsunami of human emotion crashing against the stage. Michael remained perfectly still, allowing the moment to build, understanding instinctively the power of anticipation. When the opening beats of "Wanna Be Startin' Something" finally erupted from the massive sound system, the release was cathartic. Bodies moved as one massive organism, jumping, swaying, surrendering to rhythm and spectacle. 3 songs passed in what felt like seconds and minutes simultaneously, time becoming elastic under Michael's precise control. The audience existed in a state of joyful delirium. Each perfectly executed dance move, each crystalline vocal run pulling them deeper into the alternate reality that existed only when Michael performed. After Smooth Criminal, the stage went dark again. The band continued a soft, improvised interlude as a single spotlight followed Michael to the edge of the stage. He stood there, chest heaving slightly from exertion, surveying the ocean of humanity before him. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost shy, a stark contrast to the commanding presence that had dominated the stage moments before. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight," he said, the gentle timbre of his speaking voice amplified throughout the arena. "You know, people often ask me what it feels like to perform for so many people." He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "The truth is, when I'm up here, I never feel alone. I feel like we're all one family." The crowd erupted in approval, waves of applause washing over him. Michael waited patiently for the noise to subside before continuing. "Family is very important to me, and tonight, I wanted to introduce you to someone very special in my life. Someone who reminds me every day what it means to see the world with innocent eyes." He gestured off stage, and the audience collectively leaned forward in their seats. A murmur of confusion rippled through the arena as a staff member appeared from the wings, carefully leading a small chimpanzee dressed in a miniature version of Michael's own outfit, red shirt, black pants, and tiny aviator sunglasses perched on his face. "This is my friend, Bubbles," Michael announced, his voice warming with genuine affection as he knelt down to the chimpanzee's level. The crowd's reaction was immediate, a mixture of delighted laughter, coos of adoration, and surprised gasps. Camera flashes erupted throughout the arena, creating a constellation of light. Bubbles, seemingly unfazed by the massive crowd, calmly walked to Michael's side, one small hand gripping the superstar's fingers. Bubbles has been with me for a few years now, Michael continued, gently adjusting the chimp's sunglasses. He travels everywhere with me. He's teaching me to see the world differently. The audience had fallen into a captivated silence, the unexpected intimacy of the moment drawing them in. Michael seemed to forget momentarily that he was addressing 20,000 people, his focus entirely on the small creature beside him. You know, he said, his voice taking on a contemplative quality that somehow carried to the furthest reaches of the arena. People always talk about how I've rescued Bubbles, how I've given him a better life. But the truth is, in so many ways, he rescued me. The vulnerability in his voice created a profound stillness. In a world where it's hard to know who your real friends are, where people often want something from you, Bubbles just wants to be near me. His love is unconditional. As if understanding his cue, Bubbles climbed into Michael's lap as he sat on the edge of the stage. The crowd sighed collectively at the tenderness of the scene unfolding before them. I've brought Bubbles to many shows, but always backstage. Tonight is the first time he's ever been out in front of an audience this size. Michael looked up, scanning the endless sea of faces. I was nervous about how he might react. But then I realized, if I trust you all with my heart every night, I can trust you with his too. The sincerity in his voice was palpable, hanging in the air like an unspoken promise between performer and audience. What happened next would later be recounted in thousands of personal stories, shared in fan magazines, and eventually documented in unofficial biographies of the King of Pop. A young girl, no more than 7 years old, had been watching the interaction from the front row, her face a portrait of wonder. She had come to the concert clutching a small stuffed chimpanzee, a toy she'd begged her parents to buy after seeing pictures of Michael with Bubbles in magazines. When the real Bubbles appeared on stage, her expression had transformed from excitement to something approaching spiritual revelation. Now, with an impulsiveness only possible in childhood, she broke away from her father's grasp and approached the stage, the stuffed toy extended upward in a small, trembling hand. Security moved immediately, but Michael raised his hand, stopping them with a simple gesture. The arena held its breath as he studied the child's face, her expression visible on the massive screens surrounding the stage. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but her smile radiated pure joy. Without hesitation, Michael reached down, lifting her effortlessly onto the stage beside him. The crowd gasped, then erupted in applause. The girl stood frozen, overwhelmed by suddenly finding herself in the presence of her idol. Michael spoke to her gently, his microphone capturing every word. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Clarice," she whispered, her voice barely audible until Michael tilted his microphone toward her. "And who's this?" he asked, pointing to her stuffed toy. "Bubbles," she answered, looking between the toy and the real chimpanzee with wide eyes. "I named him after your Bubbles." The audience collectively melted, a soft awe rippling through the arena. Michael's smile was radiant, genuine in a way that couldn't be rehearsed. "Would you like to meet the real Bubbles?" he asked. Clarice nodded solemnly, clutching her toy tighter. Michael looked toward Bubbles, who'd been watching the interaction with apparent curiosity. With gentle movements, Michael guided the chimpanzee forward. "Bubbles, this is Clarice. Clarice, this is Bubbles." What happened next left an indelible mark on everyone present. Bubbles, with the unpredictable gentleness sometimes shown by wild creatures, reached out one hand and softly touched the stuffed toy, then placed his other hand on Clarice's cheek, wiping away a tear. The gesture was so human, so unexpectedly tender that an audible gasp swept through the arena. Michael himself appeared moved beyond words, his eyes glistening in the spotlight. Clarice, overcome with emotion, threw her arms around the chimpanzee in a careful hug, burying her face in his small red shirt. Bubbles, rather than pulling away, placed one arm around her shoulders in what appeared to be a reciprocal embrace. The moment, captured on the arena's massive screens, triggered a wave of emotion that swept through Madison Square Garden like a summer storm. Parents clutched their children closer. Strangers reached for each other's hands. Tears flowed freely, mascara streaking down cheeks without shame or concern. The vulnerability displayed on stage had somehow broken through the invisible barriers that normally separate individuals in a crowd, creating a rare moment of collective emotional surrender. Michael, sensing the profound impact of the moment, remained silent, allowing it to unfold without narration or explanation. When Clarice finally stepped back from Bubbles, she turned to Michael and, in a gesture that would be described countless times in years to come, removed a small bracelet from her wrist, a simple friendship bracelet of woven threads, and pressed it into his hand. "This is for Bubbles," she said, her voice stronger now. "So he remembers me." Michael knelt down to her level, his expression solemn. "I promise you, Clarice, neither of us will ever forget you." He carefully tied the bracelet around Bubbles' wrist, making sure it was secure but comfortable. The chimpanzee examined the colorful threads with apparent fascination. Before returning Clarice to her parents, Michael reached into his pocket and removed something that glinted in the spotlight, a small silver pin in the shape of a crescent moon, one of the custom pieces he often wore on his costumes. He fastened it carefully to Clarice's shirt. "Now you have something to remember us by, too." As security helped Clarice back to her overwhelmed parents, Michael turned to address the crowd once more. His voice, when he spoke, carried an emotional weight that silenced even the most exuberant fans. "What you just witnessed," he said slowly, "is what I try to capture in my music. Connection, understanding, love without judgment." He glanced down at Bubbles, who now sat contentedly at his feet, still examining his new bracelet. "We talk so much about changing the world, about healing the planet. But sometimes I think it starts with these small moments, just seeing each other, really seeing each other, the way Clarice and Bubbles just did." The arena remained in reverent silence, hanging on his every word. "If this story moves you," Michael continued, his voice gaining strength, "don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us of our shared humanity and the power of connection across all boundaries." He paused, seeming to collect himself. "I'd like to dedicate the next song to Clarice, to Bubbles, and to all of you who came here tonight not just to watch a show, but to be part of something larger than ourselves." As the opening notes of Man in the Mirror began to play, the audience rose as one body, swaying in unison, lighters and later cell phone screens illuminating the darkness like earthbound stars. The performance that followed transcended entertainment, becoming instead a form of collective catharsis. Michael sang with raw emotion, his voice cracking at precisely the moments when the lyrics spoke most directly to the human condition. By the final chorus, he had invited Clarice back on stage, where she stood beside him, her small hand in his, her stuffed Bubbles clutched tightly to her chest while the real Bubbles sat nearby, a silent witness to the unfolding magic. As the song reached its climax, something unprecedented occurred. Michael stepped back from his microphone, gesturing instead for the audience to sing. 20,000 voices rose as one, filling Madison Square Garden with a chorus so powerful it seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. "I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways." The collective voice of the crowd carried the song forward while Michael stood silent, tears streaming openly down his face, one arm around Clarice's shoulders, the other hand resting gently on Bubbles' head. In that moment, the normal boundaries between performer and audience dissolved completely. There was no superstar, no fans, only human beings sharing an experience of profound connection. When the song finally ended, the applause that followed wasn't merely appreciation for a performance well executed. It was acknowledgement of something rarer, authentic human connection on a scale seldom experienced in modern life. The remainder of the concert continued with the expected precision and spectacle that defined Michael Jackson's live shows. But those who attended would later remark that something had fundamentally shifted after the Bubbles moment. There was a newfound intimacy between stage and seats, a silent understanding that they had collectively experienced something transcendent. Backstage after the show, hundreds of children's toys, stuffed animals, dolls, and especially toy monkeys were collected by staff, left by inspired audience members. Michael instructed his team to donate them to children's hospitals throughout New York, but kept one, a small stuffed chimpanzee remarkably similar to Clarice's, left with a note that read simply, "Thank you for showing us what love looks like." The bracelet Clarice had given remained on Bubbles' wrist for months afterward, visible in paparazzi photos and official appearances. Journalists asked about it repeatedly, but Michael would only smile and say it was a gift from a friend. Clarice herself would grow up to become a primatologist, dedicating her career to the conservation of great apes in the wild. In interviews years later, she would credit that moment on stage as the catalyst for her life's work. The silver moon pin Michael had given her remained one of her most treasured possessions, displayed in a small frame alongside a photograph of that night. A 7-year-old girl, a chimpanzee, and the king of pop, connected by something that transcended celebrity, species, and circumstance. As the years passed and memories of the Bad Tour faded into the tapestry of music history, those who had been present at Madison Square Garden that night would tell and retell the story of Bubbles and Clarice. Each retelling would polish the moment like a river stone, smoothing rough edges until the memory gleamed with the patina of legend. But unlike many legends that grow more fantastic with time, witnesses insisted that no embellishment was necessary. The raw emotion of that night, the unexpected tenderness between child, chimpanzee, and superstar, had indeed been exactly as magical as memory suggested. In a career defined by spectacular moments, it remained one of the most human. After Michael's tragic passing in 2009, Clarice, by then Dr. Clarice Harrison of the Jane Goodall Institute, established the Bubbles Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the rehabilitation of performing primates and the education of children about wildlife conservation. The foundation's logo featured a small silver crescent moon, a quiet homage to the moment that had set her life's course. The real Bubbles, long since retired to an animal sanctuary in Florida, received special visits from her several times a year. Whether the aging chimpanzee remembered that night at Madison Square Garden remained a mystery, but sanctuary staff noted that he seemed particularly calm in her presence, sometimes reaching out to touch her cheek in a gesture reminiscent of that long-ago encounter. On the 30th anniversary of the concert, a small plaque was installed at Madison Square Garden, easily overlooked among the venue's many commemorations of sporting triumphs and legendary performances. It featured only a simple inscription, September 12, 1988. Here, for one moment, the walls between us fell away. Below the text was a small engraving of a friendship bracelet, its woven threads rendered in meticulous detail, a permanent reminder that sometimes, in the most unexpected places and through the most unlikely messengers, we glimpse our shared humanity with perfect clarity. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of the power of connection across all boundaries, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to continue sharing these intimate glimpses into moments that transcended entertainment to touch something deeper in the human experience. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What moment from Michael's extraordinary life touched you most deeply? What story would you like us to explore next? The legacy of Michael Jackson extends far beyond record sales and performance innovations. It lives in these human moments, these unexpected intersections of celebrity and sincerity that revealed the man behind the carefully constructed image. And perhaps nowhere was that humanity more evident than in the tears that fell openly on a New York stage, as a small girl, a chimpanzee, and a global superstar reminded 20,000 witnesses that love, in its purest form, needs no translation.